think when you talk to most scientists, and even when you talk to most politicians and you talk about an emerging science, equity doesn't come up very quickly. By and large, every technology we've ever introduced has benefited a group that the previous technology benefited and actually makes life worse for others.
We've just completed a volume of the Yearbook of Nanotechnology and Society. The themes are equity, equality, and development. We wanted to bring together people who have studied equity and equality issues like gender equality, equality by ethnicity or race, ability, status, with people who've thought a lot about nanotechnology to try to see what issues and problems emerge.
So the title may be a little confusing to some because we use both the word equity and equality. We want to point out places where things are equal or unequal, and this happens a lot in nanotechnology. But not every time when something is unequal, when somebody bears more of the cost than another person, it might still be equitable. As researchers, we're focusing a lot on are things equal, but we don't want to sort of bring our own moral judgments to it and say this is equitable or inequitable. So we give our readers a chance to sort of question for themselves, is this the way that the world should be? Now that these researchers have pointed out how the world is, how do I want the world to be?
My background is in health disparities, and I have almost 30 years of experience in healthcare administration. So I've been interested in healthcare disparities for decades. My role at CISPO is to work with the Public Value Mapping Project, which is an approach to using non-economic analysis to predict public failures due to policy. And so obviously it wasn't a great choice for me to be able to pursue a new project like nanomedicine in cancer. And that's the subject of my chapter. But the idea was to identify a wider range of public value statements that might lead us to understand how the different agencies and stakeholders were dealing with this issue of equity and access to nanomedicine and cancer.
Our chapter is about equity and equality and the contribution of nanotechnology in Brazil. What we are doing basically is to propose a model to understand to what extent nanotechnology as an emerging and general purpose technology can contribute to reduce the inequalities or inequities in countries like Brazil that traditionally are being considered developing countries with a lot of inequalities, but are still doing a great effort to catch up with more developed countries in science and technology, including nanotechnology.
And at the other end of the spectrum, we have an advertisement from a corporation. So it's for a nano-enhanced golf club. And the whole idea of the golf club is so that you can destroy your competition, so that you have an unhealthy advantage. I mean, and this is why we build most technologies, is to have the advantage over somebody else, which is an inherently not just unequal, but inequitable idea.
The lessons we might learn is from looking at the Midwest. The Midwest seems to be more prominent than one might expect in nanotechnology, and there are quite a number of traditional industries that are strong in nanotechnology in the chemicals area, automotive, electronics, and I think for regions that haven't been able to make this kind of innovation transition, it will be important to get a lot of their traditional industries on board and kind of nano-ize their work.
Our groups at Georgia Tech and at Arizona State have actually been leaders in bringing up issues of equity and equality in science policy generally. And so a few years ago there was an opportunity to have a theme in the Center for Nano and Society on this area, and it was a very ripe sort of idea to pursue in this context. Nanotechnology is new. It's a good time to think about what the issues will be in the future so that you can take action now to make the future different than it might be otherwise.
Yes, it is possible to make important changes to the way we structure our institutions to make this more likely in the future. And I think that sort of has to be hammered home to policymakers, that this is something you should be concerned about, that your constituents are a very, very broad array of backgrounds, and you need to think about all of them and not just the richest 5 or 10%. So I think that if we keep saying it long enough and show examples of where we actually do cause things to become more equitable, I think we can get somewhere. What's different about nano, I think, is that we're asking these questions much earlier in the process. I'm not sure it would turn out any differently if we didn't sort of reflect on this. But so, for instance, politicians are much more concerned that the money that comes from the federal government for R&D gets spread a little more evenly. And we're seeing that in nano. We're seeing areas that didn't get a lot of money in sort of the biotech craze are getting money to do nano and are coming up with projects. You see a few more women involved in this than in some previous technologies, again, because there is this sort of push to make things more equitable in a broad variety of ways. But I do think that if we're not sort of vigilant, and that's what sort of this book is to raise this issue as something we really do need to be thinking about. If we don't take that sort of mission seriously, I think it will be the same as many other previous technologies.